Hello, my name is James Robinson, and I'm the founder and president of Phoenix Realty Advisors. This presentation is an overview of the fourth quarter office market report for Phoenix, Arizona. Before we tell you about Phoenix in particular, we think it's important to get a national perspective, to get a sense of where Phoenix lies in relation to the rest of the cities in the country. As you can tell from this slide, which looks at vacancy rates, you can see that Phoenix has the highest vacancy rate of any major metropolitan area. We're 2.5 times higher than New York, or even 5% higher than Detroit. And anytime Detroit is beating you in any economic category, you know things aren't going very well. But there is good news if you're a landlord. Unfortunately, that's equally bad news if you're a tenant, and that is that the market has finally hit bottom. Today, what we're going to discuss is not only that the market has hit bottom, but why, and why rents are going to continue to go up, why they've started to go up, and why they're going to continue to go up over the next several years. Before discussing the facts and figures, it's important to understand that the office market is a market, and it works like any other market. So to understand that, let's go back to Econ 101 and look at supply and demand. This is obviously the classic chart that we use in all of our econ classes, and it looks at how when supply and demand modify, they reach an equilibrium, and that equilibrium is called price. So when demand goes up, if there's a constant supply, then you'll have a higher rents, and the vice versa also takes effect. In terms of the supply and demand, there are two drivers for the office market. The first is the supply of office space, and the second one is the demand for office space, which we really measure as the total number of white-collar jobs. So in looking at the supply side of the equation, the simplest way to measure that is the amount of square footage available in the marketplace. You can see here that Phoenix has grown from about 80 million square feet to 156 million square feet from between 1992 and now. There are currently 156.8 million square feet in the market. The average growth has been 3.6 million square feet per year, which means we've built 75.2 million square feet since 1992. There are currently 112,000 square feet under construction, and that's an important number to recognize. In the good years, say 2007, 2008, Phoenix was building 7 to 8 million square feet of new space a year. So when you compare that to 112,000 square feet now, you realize that we're doing 1/80th the space of new construction we used to do. We're doing 1/36th of the average new construction we've done. Looked at another way, the city of Boise, Idaho, of 250,000 square feet has twice as much office space under construction as Phoenix. So in terms of building new office space, we're not doing any, and that's going to be a salient point through the rest of this presentation. The next thing to look at is the demand for office space. Now we measure demand for office space in terms of the amount of square footage that's occupied. If it's occupied, obviously it's been demanded, and if it's not occupied, there's no demand for it. And this chart looks at how much space has been occupied since 1991. We use a different set of numbers dating back to 1991 versus 1999 versus 1992, simply because we have a better source of data starting in 1999, and we want to use those numbers. So here's what to look at in terms of in terms of the office space. We've had net growth in occupied space for 14 out of the last 15 years. Since 1999, the amount of occupied space has grown by 42 million square feet. But more importantly, even since 2009, during the Great Recession, we've occupied 10 million square feet more than we did in the past. It's important to note that since 1992, in only 1 year has the amount of occupied space gone down. So it's very inelastic, and that's surprising to a lot of people because we've seen vacancy rates explode during the bad years, but that vacancy rate wasn't so much because people quit using office space, it was because we built too much space relative to the demand. And that, again, is a salient point because we're going to demonstrate, as we've demonstrated, there's no construction going on right now. So the next slide looks at vacancy rates and rental rates. And what you'll see here is that in 2011, the vacancy rate peaked at about 21.8%. And since then, it has gone down pretty steadily quarter after quarter after quarter. The surprising thing, as you notice, is that rents, even though vacancy rates were starting to decline, rents still declined pretty significantly up until about 2011, fourth quarter of 2011, where they flatlined, and in fact started to rise again in the first quarter of 2013. Now, the reason for that lag between vacancy rates going down and rental rates starting to increase is the fact that there's some musical chairs going on. a landlord that had a vacancy rate of 10%, so the building was 90% occupied, didn't really think there was a recession, and so he wouldn't lower his rental rates. But what would happen is the tenants in his building, as their leases would expire, would shop the market, go find a cheaper building, they would move to that building, which solves the new building's vacancy rate issues, but causes a problem for the existing landlord. So the existing landlord would recognize, well, now he's starting to lose tenants, and so he would lower his rates. And because leases are typically 3 to 5 years in length, it sometimes takes some time for the fact that there's a recession to trickle down to every building in the marketplace. And so there's this lag with vacancy rates. Another thing to consider is that even at 19 or 20% vacant, it's not a healthy market. There's not much reason to believe rent should be starting to increase in a market that's unhealthy, and so you saw this decline in rents. That being said, for the last 3 quarters, we've seen rents start to increase, which tells us that the market is in fact getting healthy again. So why is the market getting healthy? Well, one of the things that we think is important to look at again is construction. What you can see is that during the boom years, really between 97 and 2008, we were building an awful lot of office space. But the economy was doing well, and so most of that office space ended up being occupied. However, when the crash hit in 2008, new construction stopped because the vacancy rates had really increased. When you take that slide and you compare it to vacancy rates, you can see that we really should have stopped building at the end of 2007, but we didn't. Not because we didn't see it coming, but because we had buildings under construction, and they weren't going to simply stop constructing them. So they continued to complete the buildings that were under construction. However, that has now stopped, and again, you'll see in 2013, we only completed 400,000 square feet of space. We only have 100,000 square feet of space under construction now. What that means is that as we continue to absorb 2 to 3 million square feet of space a year, which is what we're traditionally doing, and we're not building new space, you can see here again the vacancy rates have started to decrease pretty dramatically. So this slide will give you an idea of that. This is a slide which measures newly occupied space and the vacancy rate, and you can see that as we've gobbled up a little bit of space every year, the vacancy rates have come down. So what are some of the predictions that we can draw from all of these facts? Well, first, tenants will continue to absorb between 2 and 4 million square feet of space per year. We've always seen that happen. We believe it's going to continue to happen. Secondly, new construction will remain constricted for the next 3 to 4 years until vacancy rates reach 12 to 14%. Now, why do I say that we're not going to do new construction? It's simply because of this. In order to build a new building, that costs a lot of money. In order to generate a return on investment to build a new building, we have to have rents at a certain rate. The truth is, rents have to be $30 a foot to justify new construction. Today, rents are right around $20 a foot. So until we get the vacancy rate low enough that we can increase the rents from $20 a foot to 30%, to $30 a foot, we're not going to see new construction. So what we also know over time is that rents increase dramatically the closer we get to 10% vacancy rates. And so when we see, and historically in Phoenix, when vacancy rates get somewhere between 12 and 14%, construction starts to ramp up. And so from that we can deduce that rents are going to be at about $30 a foot when vacancy rates get between 12 and 14%. So what we see is that we're absorbing between 2 and 4 million square feet per year. We know that rates have to be at 12 to 14%, which is going to take about 4 years in order to start new construction. And we know that to do new construction, rents have to go up by 50% to $30 a foot. And so what we think is that over the next 4 years, rents will increase by 50%, which will again get the rents to the point we can justify construction, at which point things will be better for landlords and obviously a lot worse for tenants. So ramifications for tenants. For the first time in 5 years, tenants must once again begin to think strategically and defensively about office space. They know that time is not their friend. Again, we know that over time we're going to absorb space. The good suites are going to go away. Landlords are going to get more and more proud. We're going to see less options. We're going to see higher rents, and we're going to see fewer landlord concessions. So if you have a lease with significant square footage expiring in the next 36 months, now is the time to think about planning for the future. Thank you for taking this time to watch this video. My name is James Robinson. My company is Phoenix Realty Advisors. All we do is represent tenants. If you have any questions about your real estate or your facilities, please give me a call or write me an email. Thank you very much for your time.